What if the wisdom you desperately seek isn't hidden in ancient temples or sacred texts, but whispered in the wind from the peaks of the Himalayas, echoed in the rhythm of African drums, or breathed in the silent prayers of desert monks? Imagine secrets so powerful they have shaped civilizations, and yet most people never pause to listen. Why do truths from distant corners of the earth resonate in our hearts with the same mysterious power as familiar scriptures? Could it be that a single thread of divine insight weaves through every culture, every faith, piercing time and borders? In a world divided by language and beliefs, there exists a tapestry of spiritual insight waiting to be unraveled. Few ever glimpse the full picture. Few ever hear the symphony beneath the noise. Today, you'll discover ancient teachings and living parables that connect east to west, old to new, revealing angles on wisdom that will challenge everything you thought you understood. Ready to see beyond the veil? Prepare to journey into the heart of spiritual truth, where light meets shadow and timeless answers await. Keep watching, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see the world forever. Have you ever wondered why the longing for meaning echoes in every human heart, no matter when or where they are born? Picture yourself on a quiet hillside thousands of years ago, as shepherds gaze at the stars, whispering questions into the darkness. Who am I? Why am I here? From the earliest moments of recorded history, people have reached upwards and inwards, searching for a wisdom that seems both just beyond their grasp and yet perfectly woven into the fabric of their being. The Bible, one of humanity's most revered sources of wisdom, begins not with a treatise, but with a mystery. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. Not a scientific manual, not an instruction guide. Rather, it speaks in poetry and rhythm, painting images that pulse with life. Pause for a moment. Feel the weight of those first 7 days where chaos surrenders to order and darkness explodes into light. Many assume these are just the myths of ancient shepherds. But the profound truth is this: these words were carefully chosen, coded to speak to restless hearts, not just in ancient Israel, but in every age and every tongue. Why do similar creation stories echo from the pyramids of Egypt to the rivers of Babylon, from the frozen steppes of Mongolia to the jungles of South America? You might be wondering, did these cultures borrow from each other? Or is there an even deeper story? An ancient memory planted in the soil of every civilization, a seed of divine wisdom waiting to sprout. Imagine the Israelites, a small tribe sandwiched between mighty empires, carrying fragile scrolls across deserts and foreign lands. In Egypt, pharaohs built monuments to immortality. In Babylon, priests read futures in the stars. But the Hebrews preserved something radically different, not a faith of stone idols, but of living word. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Deuteronomy 6:4. Words whispered from generation to generation, surviving conquest, exile, and the rise and fall of nations. What happened next changed everything. As Greek philosophers wondered about ultimate reality and ancient Indians wrote hymns to cosmic unity, the prophets of Israel thundered with a new vision. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Amos 5:24. Here, wisdom is no longer locked away in the minds of elite priests or hermit sages. It's poured out, sometimes painfully, into the mess of real human lives, into betrayal, captivity, hope, and homecoming. The Bible doesn't shy from the darkness. Instead, it brings divine truth directly into our brokenness, unafraid of questions, paradox, or suffering. Yet the Bible's wisdom has always been both deeply particular and breathtakingly universal. Take the Psalms, songs of joy and agony that give voice to every longing and fear, or the wisdom of Proverbs, which astonishingly borrows sayings from neighboring cultures like Egypt and adapts them, revealing a humility before global currents of truth. Incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. Proverbs 2:2. Can you feel it? The echoes of voices long gone, still resonating in every word. But let's look deeper. Why did Jesus so often speak in parables? Many believe it was to confuse or hide, but the profound reality is far more inciting. He knew that spiritual insight is not downloaded like information, but unwrapped layer by layer, like a mystery gift whose beauty depends on the hunger of the seeker. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. Matthew 13:44. This ancient Jewish storytelling form was shared by sages from India to Greece, showing us that wisdom is not a badge of spiritual superiority, but a treasure meant for all who seek with humility. Close your eyes and imagine the ancient marketplace. Dust rising, traders haggling, philosophers debating fate and virtue as children dart between baskets of figs. Into this noise, Jesus spoke words that stunned not just his own people, but would later echo through the world. Blessed are the meek. Matthew 5:5. Not the conquerors or the powerful, but the gentle, the open-hearted. Their voices would outlast empires. Why did this happen? How could a small, persecuted people become the unlikely carriers of wisdom that would one day circle the globe? You might be wondering, did the biblical story really change the trajectory of spiritual understanding for all humanity? The answer is hidden in plain sight, woven through history like a scarlet thread. After the Babylonian exile, Jewish thinkers encountered the wisdom philosophies of Persia and Greece, ideas about good and evil, life after death, and the nature of the soul. Instead of rejecting these outright, they debated, grappled, and sometimes, even unknowingly, let glimpses of outside wisdom filter into their story. The Book of Daniel, for one, is set at the heart of Babylon, where visions swirl with prophecies and dreams interact with the fate of empires. In Ecclesiastes, the teacher ponders existence with a poetic melancholy that would not feel out of place among Buddhist or Taoist sages. This shows us something profound about biblical wisdom. It is both rooted and reaching, deeply planted in a particular people and story, yet constantly engaging with the questions, doubts, and yearnings of the wider world. The prophets, poets, and sages did not build ivory towers. They built bridges, sometimes with trembling hands, across chasms of culture and belief. But what about the thread that links these ancient revelations to the insights of the East, to the tales told by shamans beside firelight, or Sufi poets spinning under desert stars? The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. John 3:8. What if spiritual truth, from the very beginning, was meant to be a global river, fed by streams and tributaries from every people, every time? Imagine the scene in Acts. A tense, passionate gathering in Jerusalem. Representatives from every known nation have come together, and suddenly a rushing wind fills the house. Every person hears words of wisdom in their own language, their heart's language. Many believe this story is about tongues of fire, but the deeper truth is a revelation about unity, a wisdom that transcends walls, borders, languages, and centuries. You might be wondering, if the Bible contains such universal insight, why do we so often miss its global heartbeat? Why did it emerge from such a specific place and people? The answer, like the river's source at the top of a hidden mountain, is both obvious and concealed. By rooting wisdom in real lives and real land, the biblical story shows us that the universal is not the abstract, but the incarnate, the lived, the particular. Let this sink in. Sometimes the greatest spiritual secrets are hidden not in distant galaxies, but in the footsteps of dusty wanderers, in the cries of exiles, in the laughter of children listening to stories by the fire. The wisdom of the ages is not locked away in a single culture, but revealed again and again to those with open eyes and hungry hearts. And yet, this raises an even deeper question. If echoes of divine wisdom can be found across continents and cultures, how do these different spiritual traditions reflect, challenge, and expand what we learn from the Bible? What hidden intersections, what dazzling contradictions await us as we press forward? What you're about to discover in the next part will break open the boundaries of belief, journeying into the spiritual treasures of the world, revealing insights that will make you see biblical wisdom not as a solo voice, but as a vital thread in humanity's chorus of yearning for the divine. You won't want to miss the mysteries we're about to unlock. What if the wisdom you thought you knew is only the beginning? Imagine standing on the edge of a vast ocean, the tide washing past your feet, carrying whispers from distant shores where sages, monks, and prophets have each tasted a different salt, each gazed into the same horizon. You might be asking, if biblical wisdom is so foundational, what can we possibly gain by listening to voices beyond it? The answer perhaps lies in what happens when sunlight meets rain, a rainbow formed only when different elements converge. Let's dive beneath the surface. Spiritual insight is rarely delivered neatly wrapped, with no questions left. Instead, it arrives wearing paradox, wrapped in riddles, frequently comforting, yet sometimes shattering our comfort. In Proverbs, we hear, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," Proverbs 9:10. But is this fear a trembling dread, or something far deeper, a breathtaking awe that cracks open the heart? Many believe wisdom begins with obedience, but the profound truth is, divine wisdom begins in wonder, a trembling recognition of one both unspeakably close and infinitely beyond. Throughout the world, spiritual traditions echo this awe, a sacred reverence that comes before explanation. Journey thousands of miles east, and you'll hear the Upanishads of India whisper, "That thou art," reminding seekers of their deepest unity with the divine. Buddhist sages sit in silence beneath fig trees, seeking enlightenment, not just knowledge, but transformation. In Africa, griots chant ancestral truths, weaving the Creator's voice into the pulse of daily life. These are not rival choirs, but intertwining melodies, each attending to an aspect of the sacred that no single voice could reveal alone. But here's the breathtaking revelation. At the core of these teachings, across continents and centuries, a single heartbeat thrums. Wisdom is not memorized, but realized. It's an awakening, a piercing clarity. Jesus embodied this when he declared, "The truth will set you free." John 8:32, not caged, but set free. The Sufi mystic Rumi, centuries later, would echo, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Could it be that true? Spiritual wisdom always carries an edge of danger, a willingness to be changed. Pause and let this image sink in. Wisdom, not as an ancient scroll gathering dust, but as a living, breathing presence, unpredictable, sometimes unsettling, always life-giving. You might be wondering, if all wisdom points towards the divine, why do faith traditions so often clash or claim exclusive truth? The answer flickers in the paradox. Light can be prismed into endless colors, yet each color remains part of the same radiance. Think of the biblical story of Job, a man who, shattered by loss, dares to challenge heaven. Why? His friends, anxious to defend doctrine, are silenced by the whirlwind as God's voice thunders and asks questions no human can answer. This shows us something profound about spiritual insight. It is less about possessing answers and more about being possessed by humility, a readiness to listen, even to voices that unsettle or contradict our own. From the Torah's wrestling Jacob to Zen's silent masters, true wisdom is discovered at the crossroads, where questions refuse neat answers, and revelation comes as a whisper inside the storm. Even the Apostle Paul, steeped in Torah, acknowledged the limits of human knowing. For now we see through a glass, darkly. 1 Corinthians 13:12. The quest for wisdom is a pilgrimage, not a destination. Let's travel to an ancient mountaintop in China, where Lao Tzu, the Taoist sage, penned these cryptic lines: "The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao." Many Christians might hear this as alien or abstract, but look closer. Does it not remind you of Moses at the burning bush, daring to ask for God's name, receiving only, "I am who I am," Exodus 3:14. Both traditions, Israelite and Chinese, recognize the holy can be named only by paradox, by awe. And yet, there are dazzling contrasts, moments where traditions both collide and illuminate. The Buddha, for instance, taught detachment as the path beyond suffering. Jesus called his followers to take up their cross. At first glance, these seem opposite: the escape from desire versus the willingness to enter suffering for love's sake. But look deeper. Both yield the freedom that comes when ego is left behind, when the self is broken open for a greater peace. Still, this convergence births new questions. If wisdom can arise from so many wells, how do we discern what is true? Jesus himself offers a clue: "By their fruits you will know them." Matthew 7:16. Sufi mystics say, "The fragrance of the rose remains on the hand of the giver." Both declare, wisdom is no abstract riddle, but living fruit, seen in compassion, humility, and the transformation of the heart. Yet wisdom, paradoxically, is always more than simply understanding. It is encounter, a living engagement with the mystery of God and the mystery within ourselves. The Kabbalists spoke of the Endless One, the ungraspable depths of the divine, whose presence is both a consuming fire and a gentle whisper. Christian mystics, centuries later, would speak of being lost in God's abyss, where love eclipses knowledge and presence eclipses answers. But why? Why do these images of light, darkness, ascent and descent abound throughout the world's wisdom traditions? You may be wondering if all these stories lead to the same summit, or whether instead each reveals a different face of an infinite God. The tension is real, and in this tension fresh revelation arises. Hear the words of Solomon: "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, to search out a matter is the glory of kings." Proverbs 25:2. Wisdom is not static, it is a divine game of hide and seek. The journey matters more than the arrival. Islamic tradition echoes this, naming God, the hidden and the manifest. The search itself is sacred, the questions just as holy as the partial answers. Now let's pause and feel the weight of this truth pressing on our souls. Imagine wandering under a velvet night sky, all boundaries dissolved. East and west, old and new, faith and doubt, all dissolving into the simple act of seeking. Here, at the trembling edge of certainty, insight dawns. Wisdom is not a fortress we defend, but a horizon we approach together. And from this horizon comes a living call to humility, to curiosity, to radical openness. The biblical tradition teaches that wisdom cries aloud in the streets, Proverbs 1:20, not cloistered away, not reserved for the few, but accessible to all who dare to listen. Indigenous teachers, too, have long insisted that wisdom speaks through earth, wind, ancestor, and animal, if only we silence ourselves enough to hear. So how do we faithfully navigate the abundance of spiritual voices? The answer is not to flatten all differences, nor to cling fearfully to our own corner. Rather, as the letter of James so pointedly observes, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. James 1:5. The thirst for truth, when coupled with humble seeking, is always honored by the source. This shows us something profound about the nature of spiritual insight. Its essence is not ownership, but participation, not accumulation, but surrender. Wisdom is discovered not by demanding, but by yielding, by allowing ourselves to be remade by what is revealed, even when it unsettles us. Imagine this, a potter shaping clay, each tradition pressing a different gift into the wet earth. One gives purpose, one bestows emptiness, one ignites longing, another imparts presence. What emerges is not chaos, but a vessel capable of holding the uncontainable. You might feel the stirring urge to know, can all this dazzling diversity of wisdom truly coexist? Is there a unity deeper than difference, a hidden language of the soul that transcends culture and creed? But this raises an even deeper question, one so potent it cannot be left undisturbed. If great wisdom unites us at the spiritual level, how can these insights be lived, embodied, and enacted in today's fractured world? What would our lives and our societies look like if we drew from this ancient well, walking daily in the light of global sacred wisdom? What you're about to uncover in the next part will shift you from insight to action. You'll see how the world's greatest spiritual truths move from clouds to concrete, transforming not only individuals, but whole communities. Prepare yourself. The real adventure is just beginning, and it's about to become unforgettably real. What does ancient wisdom look like when it walks the dusty roads of today? Imagine for a moment the world outside your window, not the stillness of ancient temples, but the frantic rush of traffic, the glowing faces peering into screens, the unpredictable hum of modern life. You might be tempted to think the spiritual insights of prophets and sages belong to some distant past, irrelevant to boardrooms, classrooms, kitchens, and crowded streets. But the stunning truth is this: wisdom of the ages does not fade. It adapts, pulses, even thrives in the very chaos we call contemporary life. Let's step into the heart of the modern world, where paradox rules. Technology connects us more than ever, yet so many confess to feeling profoundly alone. Knowledge explodes, but understanding often lags behind. Many believe we live in an era of information, but the profound reality is that information without wisdom is like water poured onto concrete, plenty, yet fruitless. The urgent question is not, can we know more, but how can we live wisely together now? Everywhere you look, global spiritual insights are springing to life in the most unexpected places. Consider the movement toward mindfulness, a practice rooted in ancient Buddhist meditation, now reshaping therapy rooms and corporate boardrooms alike. Workers in tech companies in Silicon Valley pause daily to turn inward, seeking the still, small voice amid the endless noise. The original monastic wisdom, "Be still and know," Psalm 46:10, quietly echoes beneath this modern phenomenon. Can you feel the ancient and the new, the East and the West, converging in a single human breath? But the river of wisdom flows in more directions. In bustling urban neighborhoods, you'll find restorative justice programs inspired by indigenous models of reconciliation, where circles of elders, offenders, and victims gather not to punish, but to restore and heal. This is not a utopian dream. It is biblical justice. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, rippling outwards into police stations and courtrooms, changing lives at the ground level. Pause and picture a schoolroom where children from every background gather, each carrying their own story of longing and struggle. Increasingly, teachers draw on universal spiritual teaching, whether it's the Jewish tradition of tikkun olam, repairing the world, or the African Ubuntu, I am because we are. These aren't dusty maxims, they're lived truths that reframe competition into compassion, difference into dignity. Imagine a generation raised to see themselves, not as isolated islands, but as threads in a global tapestry. Now turn your gaze to conflict zones, to the scarred streets of Belfast, the tense villages of Palestine and Israel, neighborhoods in Chicago or Rio. Here, peacemakers dare to embody spiritual realities, bridging divides others believe unbridgeable. In South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission embraced Archbishop Desmond Tutu's spiritually rooted vision of forgiveness, not as a weakness, but as the radical healing power at the heart of the gospel and echoed in countless traditions. There, victims and perpetrators alike tell their stories, tears mixing with hope. The ancient Jewish value of teshuvah, return, repentance, and the Buddhist commitment to mindful compassion bearing fruit in policy, not just prayer. But you may be wondering, isn't all this just idealism? A few outliers swimming against an ocean of violence, greed, and despair. Yet, over and over, we see that where ancient global wisdom is dared, even imperfectly, the impossible cracks open. Consider Brian Stevenson, a modern prophet working with condemned prisoners in the United States. Driven both by Micah's call to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God, Micah 6:8, and by the legacy of Dr. King's radical inclusion, Stevenson's work is animated by a living spiritual conviction. Each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. This thread weaves through restorative justice, through Buddhist compassion for suffering, through every true spiritual tradition that sees the possibility for renewal. Imagine the icy silence of a hospital room. Doctors and nurses, stretched thin by a global pandemic, drawing strength not only from science, but from whispered prayers, acts of self-emptying love, and rituals of lament. COVID-19 revealed the limitations of data alone. At the height of isolation, chaplains, rabbis, imams, and wise elders drew from their wells the Kaddish of grief, the Lord's Prayer, the Buddhist metta, reminding the dying and their families, you are not alone, even now wisdom is with us. Consider the explosion of interfaith councils and multi-faith movements, where Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, and humanists gather to confront issues of poverty, racism, and climate emergency. The ancient vision of loving your neighbor as yourself, Leviticus 19:18, becomes not a relic, but a radical mandate for action. These councils pass not only statements but meals, shelter, jobs, clean water, tangible, incarnate answers to prayers echoing from Jerusalem to the Ganges. Perhaps you're sensing a pattern, a pulse running through all these modern examples. It is wisdom refusing to be locked away in books or nostalgia. It's as if humanity, standing at the crossroads, is rediscovering spiritual insights, not as private comfort, but as public responsibility. The Dalai Lama teaches our prime purpose in this life is to help others. The Prophet Muhammad said, "The best among you are those who bring the greatest benefit to mankind." Jesus declared, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." John 13:35. Ancient voices, contemporary urgency, one harmony. But let me pull you even closer. Imagine your own daily existence. What happens if you practice the art of the pause, becoming present before you answer your child, your co-worker, or your weary reflection in the mirror? What if, instead of rushing past a stranger's pain, you see, as the Good Samaritan did, not a problem to be avoided, but a neighbor to be loved? Spiritual wisdom becomes flesh and bone, heartbeat and breath, not in grand gestures, but in the sacred ordinary. This is no empty platitude. Studies show that those who cultivate gratitude, rooted in give thanks in all circumstances, 1 Thessalonians 5:18, and echoed by gratitude rituals worldwide, report greater happiness, resilience, and health. Neuroscience confirms what sages have always known. Wisdom is not simply what you think, but how you live, love, and serve. Look to the world's environmental movements, many ignited by indigenous reverence for the earth as sacred, from the Celtic blessing of the rivers to the Maori guardianship of land and sky. The biblical call to tend and keep the garden, Genesis 2:15, is no longer an old myth, but a summons echoing in international climate agreements and the passionate cries of young activists. Spiritual insight becomes a wildfire, leaping generations and boundaries, calling us to repair what has been broken. And what about business? In the bustling world of commerce, so often seen as hostile to the sacred, a new generation of entrepreneurs borrows principles from the world's wisdom traditions: honesty, servant leadership, the pursuit of purpose beyond profit. Companies are re-evaluating their responsibilities through the lens of ancient insights, asking not just, what can we gain, but whom do we serve? This is the Book of Proverbs in action. Buddhist right livelihood and Islamic business ethics lighting the way in a global marketplace. Pause for a second and truly imagine, what would it feel like for you to weave even one strand of this wisdom into your own life today? Perhaps it begins with a single intention, a moment of stillness, a silent prayer before decision, a cup of tea shared in slow gratitude with a friend or stranger. The practice of presence, as taught by mystics east and west, bears fruit not only for your soul, but ripples outward, family, neighbor, world. This reveals something profound about the transformational power of ancient wisdom in the modern world. It is not about escaping this moment, but entering it more fully, soul awake, eyes clear, hands open. It is becoming, as the world's sages all invite, fully alive. You may now be burning with a deeper question. If these transformative practices are possible for individuals and even communities, can they become the very river that shapes our future? Can the combined wisdom of the ages not only mend broken hearts, but heal nations and transfigure the destiny of humanity itself? What you're about to discover in the next part will propel you beyond inspiration, into the realm of destiny and prophecy. Get ready, for the ancient river of wisdom carries us now toward the edge of tomorrow, where visions await that could alter the course of our world. Stay with this journey. The greatest revelation is just ahead. Imagine prophetic voices whispering not only from ages past, but calling to us from the horizon of tomorrow, a future shimmering just out of reach, yet pulsing ever closer. You stand at the crossroads, the winds of tradition and progress swirling around you. Can the wisdom of the ancients truly chart our path into an uncertain future? Or are we simply repeating old words into modern voids? Many believe prophecy is sealed in Scripture, a relic of fire and thunder. But the deeper truth awaiting those who dare to look is that ancient wisdom is the seedbed of tomorrow's greatest revelations. Pause and let the words of Isaiah ring out. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. Prophecy is not just prediction, it is possibility unveiled, a summons to witness divine patterns breaking through the ground of our present. The Hebrew prophets once watched empires rise and fall, yet their eyes were fixed on a time of swords beaten into plowshares, of justice rolling like an unstoppable river. Their vision was not escape but remaking, rooted in God's ways, but always stretching beyond. What do these promises mean in our own turbulent era? You might be wondering, can the voice that echoed in the desert, prepare the way of the Lord, still resound among traffic lights and satellites? Jesus promised a future where the meek shall inherit the earth, Matthew 5:5, where mustard seeds of faith would move mountains. But what does meekness, what does faith look like in the face of climate change, artificial intelligence, and global migration flows? Listen closer, because the trembling edge of prophecy is here, right now, at the frontier of human story. Across the globe, spiritual communities are awakening to a vision that transcends past boundaries. In one groundbreaking moment, Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar embraced, Christian and Muslim, East and West, issuing a joint call for global fraternity, echoing not only biblical dreams of shalom, but the Buddhist prayer for the liberation of all beings. The future is being braided together, voice by voice, through the shared pulse of ancient wisdom. But this river of prophecy flows through paradox. Technology, our dazzling promise, threatens to become our greatest idol. Many believe that progress alone will save us, but the silence beneath the screens exposes a hollowness that no innovation can fill. The wisdom of the ages warns, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Mark 8:36. Here is the prophetic challenge. Will humanity become architects of destruction or gardeners of renewal? Imagine the difference if we chose the latter, the explosive possibility if the wisdom of humility, stewardship, and reverence became the foundation of our digital era. Already we see stirrings. New generations are hearing echoes of ancient prophecy and interpreting them as blueprints for action. Young climate activists invoke not only science, but the shared sacred call to tend and keep the earth, naming each tree and river as holy inheritance. Imagine a global ethical awakening where technology is guided, not by profit alone, but by the principle of Ubuntu, I am because we are, and biblical commands to love the stranger, care for the widow, and leave the corners of our fields for the poor. Suddenly, prophecy is not distant thunder. It is the electric charge that animates every act of restoration. And yet, this raises an exhilarating and sobering question. What if the darkness that seems to cover the earth is but the backdrop for light, yet to be revealed? The prophets never denied catastrophe. They saw it with open eyes. Yet always their message soared on the wings of hope. I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Joel 2:28. The wisdom of the ages is not nostalgia, but a call to creative dreaming, a radical hope that births new possibilities into the waiting world. Pause and fill your senses with this. A village where solar panels line every roof, an answer to centuries-old prayers for light. A bustling city where conflict transformation draws from both ancient tribal council circles and progressive peace-building. Hospitals guided not only by algorithms, but by the Hippocratic Oath and the Taoist art of balance. Schools teaching the Sermon on the Mount alongside the Golden Rule of Confucius and the principle of non-harm from Jain tradition. The future is not a monologue, it is a symphony of sacred memory and brave innovation. But you may be asking, how do we discern the difference between mere optimism and true prophecy? In an age of endless noise, how do we recognize the voice that is truly of God? That holy vision which unites, heals, and elevates? The answer, mysterious and simple, is hidden in the pattern of sacred history. True prophecy emerges where humility meets courage, where the wisdom of the past is honored but never idolized. It is tested by its fruits, by justice blooming, by barriers falling, by love made manifest in unexpected alliances. So often, the real prophets are those the world ignores or silences, the child leading the lion, the exiled mystic, the advocate who will not let the world forget the dignity of the least. Imagine the coming century as a garden yet unplanted, and the wisdom of the ages as seeds awaiting a new spring. Perhaps for the first time, humanity will heed the warning and promise woven through every tradition. The future is not written in stone. It is written in our response, our choice to listen, to change, to embody what we most revere. This shows us something profoundly hopeful. The next chapter of global spirituality could be an age of reunion rather than rivalry. Diversity not as division, but as divine abundance. The predictions of the prophets become possibilities when hearts are open and ancient insights are risked in the forging of what's next. Let yourself feel the exhilarating uncertainty of this moment. What if, in the years ahead, the lines separating sacred and secular, tradition and innovation dissolve into a wider creativity? A future where wisdom is the river flowing beneath every policy, every invention, every act of kindness. This isn't fantasy, it is the prophetic potential that pulses just beneath the surface of our fractured world. But here, right at the threshold where prophecy and possibility meet, an even deeper question arises. If we carry the seeds of ancient wisdom into the soil of tomorrow, what kind of people must we become? What spiritual strength, what habits of heart and mind will be needed to enter this future? Not as fearful bystanders, but as courageous cultivators of hope, justice, and love. What you're about to witness in the next part dives into the most intimate frontier, the deepening of spiritual connection. Prepare to journey beyond vision and into the living heart of wisdom, where global insight becomes personal and prophecy meets prayer, igniting a transformation that begins not in crowds, but in you. Don't turn away. The pulse of destiny quickens, and your place in the story calls. What if the bridge between prophecy's promise and tomorrow's reality is not some grand event in the skies, but the quiet, holy work of deepening spiritual connection within and among us? Imagine the world as a vast cathedral, each life a flame flickering in the stained glass, throwing colored light into the shadowed corners of existence. In the rush of modern living, it is tempting to imagine that spiritual connection means retreat, escape, or isolation. But the profound truth is this: the wisdom of the ages is not a summons to solitude, but to communion, not to an untouched peak, but to the shared table, the outstretched hand, the intimate embrace of the sacred within the ordinary. Close your eyes and sense the rhythm, heartbeat and breath, silence and song. From the first sacred gatherings around ancient fires, humans have longed not just for answers, but for presence. Where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them, Jesus promises, Matthew 18:20. How mysterious, how simple, divine presence is unveiled, not in the thunder of single revelation, but in the gentle spark between souls, the space that opens when we risk being truly seen and seeing others as the sacred image-bearers they are. But perhaps you're wondering, in a world where millions chase connection through glowing rectangles and hurried conversations, is deep spiritual intimacy still even possible? Ancient insight, echoed across traditions, resounds with a hidden yes. The prophets, the mystics, the poets all declare connection is not only possible, it is the hinge on which transformation turns. Across continents and centuries, shamans journeyed between worlds. Christians gathered to break bread. Sufi poets spun rapturous hymns of union. Buddhist monks practiced loving kindness for all beings. Each tradition, a river flowing toward the ocean of belonging. Many believe spirituality is solely the soaring flight of prayer, the blaze of enlightenment, the mystical summit. But the deeper truth is that sacred connection roots downward, into listening, into forgiveness, into the ordinary rhythms of shared life. The African proverb sings it, "A person is a person through other people." The Apostle Paul picks up the refrain, "We, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another." Romans 12:5. Imagine the feeling, a whispered prayer at sunrise, not just your own, but the echo of 1 billion hearts awakening in gratitude around the world. Pause and let that sensation sink deep. A vast, invisible web linking joy and sorrow, faith and doubt, all pulsing with divine electricity. To deepen spiritual connection is not to deny individuality, but to discover the luminosity of union, the dazzling way our unique stories become part of an eternal tapestry. Consider the practice of shared silence. In the Quaker meeting house, seekers gather in stillness, letting God speak in the hush between words. In Japanese Zen, monks sit in pure presence, their hearts attuned to the subtle breath of the universe. Even in crowded cities, some carve out sanctuaries of stillness together, defying the tyranny of noise with the gentle rebellion of collective peace. This isn't passive waiting, it is an active, expectant surrender, a shared acknowledgement of mystery that invites the sacred in. And yet, nothing kindles connection like vulnerability. From Jewish confessions on Yom Kippur to the healing circles of indigenous elders, from confessionals in Catholic churches to 12-step meetings in church basements, the wisdom of the ages teaches. Authentic connection demands honesty, humility, the laying down of masks. Confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. James writes, James 5:16. The E? Paradox. It is when we risk exposing our wounds that the balm of healing flows, not because our pain disappears, but because love meets us exactly where we are. Now imagine stepping into a community meal, plates passed from hand to grateful hand, prayers rising like incense, laughter and weeping entwined. Around such tables, the seeds of global wisdom are watered daily. Sikh langar feeds the stranger as honored guest, echoing Abraham's ancient hospitality. Sufi dervishes chant their zikr until ego dissolves into song, a foretaste of unity. Here, connection is not theoretical, it is experienced as bread. Broken tears shed, burdens shared. But what if our hearts feel numb? What if the trials of our era, the griefs and disappointments, have left us wary, closed off? You might ask, is there a way back to deep connection? The answer, surprising and hopeful, arises from every wisdom tradition. Begin with attentive presence. Stand at the threshold, your own breath, the face of a loved one, the dawn shimmering on city towers or country fields. The psalmist urges, be still and know. Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh teaches to wash the dishes, finding sacredness in the ordinary. Connection is lit, spark by spark, whenever we notice, honor, and abide with what is real right now. But here is the sacred paradox. Deepening our spiritual connections with others is rooted in a deeper turning inward, an encounter with the God who dwells within. Many traditions call this prayer, others meditation or contemplation, still others walking in nature or singing with one's soul. Whatever the form, the purpose is the same, to become a vessel, open to receiving and giving the love that binds all things together. The Kabbalists speak of devikut, clinging to the divine. Sufis call it fana, dissolving the self in beloved. Saint Teresa of Avila compares the soul to a castle, each relationship, each moment of presence opening a new inner chamber. This shows us something astonishing and tender about spiritual connection. Its greatest depths are revealed as we give ourselves away for the good of another. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends, Jesus declares, John 15-13. Here is wisdom shining as paradox. The more deeply we connect, the more spacious our souls become. The more we give, the more we receive in return. But don't mistake this for sentimentality. To deepen connection is to engage with suffering as well as joy. It means showing up for the broken places, the friend in despair, the neighbor in need, the stranger crying out for justice. The wisdom of the ages refuses to turn away. Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Romans 12:15. Buddhist metta prayers echo, may all beings be free from suffering. In responding to pain, in refusing indifference, the invisible bonds of soul community are forged anew. Let's reflect on the mystery of presence across boundaries. When monks in Myanmar bow in prayer, when Christians in Brazil light candles of hope, when seekers in Paris or Accra meditate at dawn, they join a living, breathing communion across time zones, cultures, languages. It is as if the world is woven together in a single act of yearning for the sacred. Technology, for all its dangers, can serve as a bridge, a global vigil for peace, a virtual dawn prayer, a poetry reading uniting East and West, North and South. There is no edge to this fellowship but the ones we ourselves draw. Perhaps you're sensing the invitation rising within, from knowledge to experience, from solitude to solidarity, from surface to depth. The wisdom of the ages summons us to this lifelong pilgrimage, this art of connection, seeking the divine not beyond the clouds, but within the hands, eyes, laughter, and aches of one another. But this deepening is never finished. As soon as we rest in the warmth of sacred connection, new doors appear, new invitations arise. To forgive again, to listen yet deeper, to welcome the stranger, to risk love in the face of betrayal, misunderstanding, or loss. The river of connection, ever ancient, ever new, widens with each yes we speak. Now you might be asking, how can we, in the swirl of everyday noise and heartbreak, cultivate these connections intentionally? What simple practices, ancient yet fully alive, can root us daily in the spiritual web that binds us all? In the next part, you'll discover practical, time-tested steps for growing your own roots into the soil of global wisdom, a living path not only for saints and mystics, but for every longing soul. Don't look away. The next revelation is the key that unlocks the practice of the presence you've always craved. The journey is about to become breathtakingly real. Step now from the high summit of vision to the living earth beneath your feet. The ancient wind of wisdom whispers, lasting transformation grows not from single mountaintop moments, but from seeds planted in the ordinary soil of every day. Many have heard truth and longed for change, yet the profound and often overlooked reality is this: the wisdom of the ages becomes truly ours, not in a flash of insight, but in simple, repeated, intentional acts that shape the contours of our hearts. You might believe that spiritual growth belongs to saints, mystics, or gurus, those set apart from the world's buzz. But the deeper invitation is startling. Holy wisdom invites every soul, right here, right now, to begin again. Imagine it. A mosaic formed from the smallest tiles, a garden grown from hidden roots, a river formed by many drops. The journey of 1,000 miles, as the Taoist sages say, begins with a single step. So what are the steps we can take, ancient, universal, yet made new in every generation, to embody the wisdom of the ages? What bridges can we build between insight and action, longing and living? Pause and let this image settle in. A potter's hands shaping wet clay, every gentle pressure fashioning something beautiful and useful. That is what ancient spiritual practice seeks to do with the raw material of your days. Let's uncover together the time-tested patterns that give wisdom texture and weight in the here and now. Across traditions, the first step is always attentiveness, the deliberate cultivation of awareness. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10 is both a command and a lifeline. Buddhist teaching too invites us to breathe in and know that you are alive. Before great change always there is attention to self, to breath, to the gentle pulse of the present moment. Try this wherever you are. Stop, breathe. Notice the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, the shape of your thoughts. Spending 5 minutes each day in stillness enacts the ancient metaphor of clearing the inner temple, a ritual as old as humanity and desperately needed in the noise of modern life. Presence is the door through which all wisdom enters. The wisdom of the ages is not for rare occasions. It is a structure to hold your hours. Muslims pause 5 times a day for prayer. Monks set their watches by the divine office. Jews welcome the Sabbath with singing and light. Buddhists awaken with morning chants. Even the most scattered life can be gently directed by rhythm. What ritual can you claim? Perhaps it's a morning gratitude journal, a single psalm or proverb recited at lunch, a sunset walk to release your worries. Choose one, anchor it to something you already do, a commute, a meal, a break, and let it shape you quietly, like water smooths stone. Every tradition offers sacred texts, not as monuments to memorize, but as living words to digest and wrestle with. Lectio Divina, the ancient Christian practice, teaches us to read slowly, listening for the phrase that shimmers, allowing it to become prayer. Sufis recite the names of God. Buddhists turn the pages of the Dhammapada. Hindus meditate on the Bhagavad Gita. Take a passage that speaks to you, read it aloud, sit with each word. Ask, what is being revealed to me through this story, parable, or proverb? Let the words echo in your day. Return to them as to water in a desert. Over time, you will find the sacred texts reading you as much as you read them. Spiritual growth is never only inward. Faith without works is dead, declares James 2:17. Wisdom hidden in the heart is like a seed unfed by rain. Every day brings invitations to compassion, a listening ear for a colleague, a kind word for a stranger, chopping an extra vegetable for a neighbor in need. Gandhi drew from the Bhagavad Gita to transform an empire with non-violence. Dorothy Day channeled the Beatitudes into soup kitchens for the homeless. We too can incarnate ancient wisdom suddenly, wonderfully, in a world desperate for gentle hands. Start small, let the rhythm of giving grow you large. Growth blooms best amid the mysterious quiet where God's whisper can reach us. It is no accident that the world's sages, Elijah in his cave, Muhammad on the mountain, Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, encountered deepest truth sheltering in silence. Set aside time to step away from screens, news, and striving, and allow the disordered pieces of your inner world to settle. Whether in the hush before dawn, the hush after children's bedtime, or a walk alone beneath the sky, make a meeting place for the sacred. Ask not only, what do I want, but what is being asked of me today? Gratitude is the sunlight where wisdom flourishes. In everything give thanks, urges Paul, 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Native American prayers begin and end with gratitude for sky, earth, ancestors, and daily bread. Neuroscience now confirms what ancient teachers have said all along, that gratitude rewires the mind toward joy and resilience. Each day, record 3 gifts, large or small. Speak thanks aloud before a meal, or with each step on your way to work. Make gratitude your lens, and see how wisdom reveals itself in places you had overlooked. The river of wisdom runs clearest where forgiveness flows. All traditions wrestle with the poison of resentment, the liberation of release. Forgive us our debts as we forgive. Matthew 6:12. Forgiveness, say the Sufis, is the perfume the trampled flower releases on the heel that crushed it. Begin by naming a hurt, your own or another's. If ready, offer forgiveness in silence or speech. If wounded, allow yourself to ask for healing. Sometimes the smallest step, the willingness to desire freedom, begins a chain of mercy that changes a family, a workplace, or a world. No spiritual journey flourishes in isolation. The wisdom of the ages is always sung, shared, and sustained together. Join a circle, a faith community, a study group, an interfaith dialogue, an online gathering for prayer or reflection. Witness and share, give and receive. As iron sharpens iron, says Proverbs 27:17, so one person sharpens another. When you stumble, let another lift you. When you rejoice, let it echo into someone else's heart. Community is the laboratory where wisdom becomes mature. What if sacredness waits, not only in holy places, but in the daily and mundane? Washing dishes with mindfulness becomes an act of humility. Driving in traffic, you whisper a blessing for the strangers around you. Folding laundry, you remember to clothe yourself in kindness. Jesus compared God's kingdom to yeast in dough, hidden and at work. The greatest spiritual growth may arise not from ecstasy, but fidelity to the daily, returning again and again to kindness, patience, honesty in the moment at hand. The final and perhaps the hardest practice is humility, holding on to conviction but remaining open to learning, especially through surprise, challenge, even doubt. Test everything, hold fast what is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. The world's wisdom speaks to us through unexpected voices, strangers, dreams, even failures. Approach life as a student, ever willing to revise, listen, begin anew. Let worldly certainties crack open to let the light pour through. In every season ask, what new wisdom is being offered? What is the Spirit breathing into me now? This pattern of daily cultivation is no guarantee of an easy life. Storms will come, questions and failures are sure. But over time, a hidden change takes root. A quiet clarity, a peace that grows like dawn, a strength that bends but does not break. This is wisdom incarnate, the secret thread braiding ancient springs into your present life. Imagine truly if millions embrace these practical steps, each home, each workplace, each heart a seedbed of sacred growth. What might happen to our families, our cities, our very world, if ancient wisdom was lived out, not as memory, but as moment-by-moment reality? But this raises yet another, even more stirring question. What is the power when shared spiritual growth moves from individual hearts into vibrant communities of transformation? How does the wisdom of the ages ignite, deepen, and multiply as it is woven from solitary effort into the tapestry of collective faith and hope? In the next part, you'll see these practices coming alive among communities and families, stories of failures and victories, laughter and tears, revealing how the world's great wisdom is not just possible, but already changing us together. The spark of sacred growth is about to become a roaring fire. Will you be part of it? What happens when individual sparks of spiritual longing converge, igniting a fire that reshapes the horizon? Imagine the scattered embers of wisdom, each glowing in solitude, suddenly drawn together by an ancient wind, forming a blaze of light and warmth that no single life could sustain alone. You may sense a hidden truth here. The wisdom of the ages is most powerful not merely in private devotion, but when it is breathed into a living, pulsing community. Alone, a single candle flickers. Together, a multitude can illumine even the darkest night. From the dawn of history, human beings have gathered, beneath trees, in cathedrals, beside rivers, and in humble homes, yearning not just for answers, but for one another. The Hebrew psalmist proclaims how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. Psalm 133:1. In the shadow of the Roman Empire, the early Christians formed radical communities. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Acts 2:44, defying the world's divisions with sacrificial love. The Quran enjoins, help you one another unto righteousness and pious duty. Surah 5:2. Hindu ashrams, Buddhist sanghas, tribal circles, and Sufi orders all pulse with the same conviction. We are made for each other, voices in a choir of faith, hands in a shared labor of hope. But what does this ancient communal yearning look like in the frantic echo chambers of our own time? Perhaps you wonder, can true shared faith experience survive the tides of individualism, suspicion, and digital isolation? The answer, rebellious and bright, comes alive in countless living stories, communities scattered across the planet, breathing old wisdom into new realities. Picture a sanctuary after disaster, maybe a synagogue sheltering hurricane survivors, a mosque hosting a meal for immigrants, a temple hall echoing with the laughter of homeless children. Here, compassion is not a theory, but bodies and souls pressed together, discovering in crisis the deep bond of shared humanity. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. The commandment becomes community in flesh and bone, faith that is tasted, touched, and risked. Listen. In a rural village in Kenya, elders and youth gather in the shade of an acacia tree to debate, forgive, plan, and celebrate. A tradition older than written language, yet as vital as the morning sun. Here the wisdom of Ubuntu hums, I am because we are. Their rituals, songs, stories, shared work pass on not only knowledge but character, knitting hearts in a web of trust. Across the world, synagogue Shabbats and Christian agape feasts break the routine of ordinary life, inviting friends and strangers to a table where every story counts. Even in noisy urban neighborhoods, potluck suppers, support groups, and recovery circles reclaim the ancient power of breaking bread together, where silence turns to song and loneliness melts in laughter. At every table, a rediscovery. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Hebrews 13:2. But true community is tested not only by celebration, but by the fierce storms of conflict and pain. In Belfast, divided by centuries of suspicion, Catholics and Protestants have formed peace lines and interfaith prayer circles, refusing to surrender the dream of reconciliation. In Rwanda, survivors of genocide tend gardens and sing together each morning, a chorus of hope declaring, never again. Each act of forgiveness becomes a small miracle, each holding fast to the wisdom that a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Ecclesiastes 4:12. Within these living laboratories, faith shows its hidden power. Where one person's courage fails, another's steadies. Where hope ebbs, a neighbor's song rekindles it. Communities learn to grieve together, the circle unbroken even in the valley of shadows, to celebrate together, letting gratitude join every heart, to vision together, dreaming new worlds and daring to act. This is the communion of saints made living flesh, a cloud of witnesses, stretching through every age. And yet, each community's strength is found in its vulnerability. Real connection cannot be manufactured with surface rituals or forced smiles. Authentic shared faith grows only where honesty, confession, and forgiveness are as common as prayer. In Alcoholics Anonymous, people introduce themselves by naming their struggle. Hi, I'm John and I'm an alcoholic, and receive in return not shame, but belonging. Around kitchen tables and in sacred circles, people bear witness to each other's pain and promise, becoming midwives to mutual healing. Perhaps most deeply, the communal wisdom of the ages offers a radical alternative to a world built on competition and scarcity. Imagine a neighborhood not of gated fences, but of open doors, where each member's gift is treasured, where the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, 1 Corinthians 12:21. Story after story emerges. Community gardens started in abandoned lots, parents banding together to mentor children, rivals setting aside grudges to build homes for the homeless. These are not distant miracles. They bloom wherever people risk the vulnerability of togetherness. The sacred journey is not always easy. To build a real community means facing disappointment, friction, even betrayal. The wisdom traditions have never promised a utopia. Yet they offer disciplines that hold us together through failure, regular forgiveness, honest lament, laughter strong enough to bear the weight of sorrow, rituals that bind, be it lighting candles, chanting prayers, or simply sharing a meal at the end of a long day. Technology, too, becomes a surprising vessel for communal faith. Prayer chains stretch across continents in seconds. Virtual choirs unite voices once divided by oceans. Online support groups become lifelines for the isolated and wounded. While dangers lurk in these digital spaces, so too does the chance to become, if we choose, living stones built into a spiritual house. 1 Peter 2:5, a worldwide fellowship not of sameness, but of sacred solidarity. Let your imagination expand. What if the wisdom of the ages, breathed through communities of every shape and style, could become a living answer to our era's deepest wounds? Loneliness, division, longing for meaning. What if the future was not just the triumph of technology or the survival of the fittest, but the flowering of millions of interwoven faith journeys, rising and falling, shaping a world where no one stands alone? And so, let this truth settle in your soul. The deepest transformations happen not in solo pursuit, but within and because of communities that dare to open their doors to each other and to the divine. The wisdom of the ages, shared and multiplied, becomes a force that heals and remakes the world. One relationship, one gathering, one act of courage at a time. But this raises the most personal and breathtaking question yet. How can these communal wells of wisdom overflow into your own life's story? What does it look like when the river of global insight meets the intimate landscape of your heart? When your struggles, hopes, and daily journeys become the soil for transformation? In our final part, you'll hear stories of real lives changed, of ordinary people touched and transformed by spiritual wisdom, and how you too can enter into this eternal river of meaning. The journey is about to turn inward and become yours. The most powerful revelation waits just ahead. Imagine the world's greatest wisdom as a mighty river, its currents shaped by prophets, sages, and dreamers, yet always flowing through the landscape of individual hearts. From ancient scrolls and communal feasts, from fireside parables and the crowded echo of cathedrals, the river of the ages finds its destination, the silent sanctuary where you encounter yourself and the divine. Pause now and let the hush settle in, because at the core of every tradition, every movement, every chorus of faith is a simple question whispered in the shadows. How will this wisdom change me? What happens when the teachings of the world's mystics, saints, and seers move beyond inspiration, becoming the living current that shapes your own soul? Many believe spiritual stories are just distant echoes, the stuff of heroes or ancestors, not meant for the ordinary struggles of daily life. But the profound, electrifying truth is this: the wisdom of the ages comes fully alive only in the gritty details of real lives, transformed in the tension of joy and pain, doubt and surrender. And now, as we close this journey, it's time to come home, to the realm where ancient rivers carve new paths through each unique life. Let's step gently into the stories of a few pilgrims, ordinary people from every continent, who allowed the world's spiritual treasures to unlock new depths within. Picture Amina, a young woman in Morocco. She grew up reciting the prayers of her ancestors, yet always felt restless, a longing that could not be stilled by custom alone. One day, by chance or destiny, she was invited to an interfaith gathering where words from Buddhist, Christian, and Sufi wisdom were shared. The phrase, "Let the beauty you love be what you do," Rumi, lingered like perfume. She began quietly to blend her daily prayers with moments of silent mindfulness. The muezzin's call became not only a summons to ritual, but an invitation to presence. Weeks later, while serving tea to strangers, Amina felt the barrier fall away. Her inner struggles transfigured into a luminous, surprising peace. Her story is one of many, showing the divine does not demand uniformity, but welcomes all who seek with open hearts. Consider James, a retired firefighter in Chicago, whose faith was once only tradition. After a life-changing injury left him isolated, he stumbled upon the Psalms and, through an online meditation group, discovered Buddhist breathing practices and the Jewish grace of lament. For the first time, he poured his pain into prayer, finding solace in the words, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me." Psalm 23:4. Gradually, gratitude crept in, even amid setbacks. Breaking bread with neighbors in a recovery group, he tasted the old wisdom made new. Sorrow may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 30:5. His journey weaves the old and the new, revealing how wisdom is discovered not apart from suffering, but through it. Now watch Marta, a mother in Brazil, tending her children in a favela. She draws strength from her Catholic rosary, but it's the communal singing, full of African rhythm, indigenous story, and gospel hope, that fans her spirit's flame. When trouble looms, she recalls her grandmother's stories of ancestor spirits and forgiveness. During the pandemic, when fear threatened to choke hope, Marta turned to daily gratitude, inspired by a friend practicing Japanese Nikan reflection, finding light in the smallest gifts, shared laughter, sunlight, the steady beat of her own heart. Her resilience whispers the secret of survival. Wisdom is communal, cumulative, a thread passed, received, and rewoven every day. Perhaps you see yourself in these stories, a seeker, restless or despairing, building a spiritual boat out of what you find in the wreckage and the wonder of your own days. The river of the ages always invites a leap, a step, a surrender to transformation. The common thread is not perfection, but openness, a holy willingness to be changed, to ask new questions, to wrestle through doubt into greater compassion. Let's turn the inward light onto your own life. Where do ancient words echo for you? Perhaps a proverb from childhood, the memory of a chant, the comfort of ritual, or the startling beauty of a song that crossed your path at just the right moment. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Psalm 119:105. The invitation is there to pick up these lanterns one by one and carry them into your own shadows and celebrations. Imagine the power of even simple acts, pausing for gratitude before a meal, forgiving a hurt from years past, lighting a candle for peace, or listening, truly listening to someone you'd once ignored. Each gesture, drawn from different wells of spiritual wisdom, becomes a thread, weaving your heart into the great tapestry of human yearning for meaning. And yet, the river does not force, it whispers. Transformation cannot be manufactured. It arrives gradually, like dawn, through choices repeated in darkness and light. Real wisdom is not a disembodied idea, but embodied practice. Your knees on the floor in prayer, your laughter spilled into a room, your tears shed honestly with a friend, your voice raised against injustice, your breath stilled in the center of chaos. In a small town in India, a teacher named Arun rises before dawn to chant from the Bhagavad Gita, but ends his meditation by reading the Beatitudes, "Blessed are the peacemakers," Matthew 5:9. He brings these words into his classroom, greeting each child with namaste and a blessing of peace. His students come from Hindu, Muslim, Christian, and Sikh families, yet in Arun's room, ancient wisdom is not a relic, but a living bridge. Prejudice melts, and kindness flourishes. Arun's quiet daily fidelity is a reminder. Transformation ripples outward, one relationship at a time. Or consider Lila, a recent widow in Sydney, whose grief threatened to drown her. Lost in sorrow, she found a poem by Kabir and the lament psalms that echoed the ache in her soul. Through an online grief circle that blended Jewish mourning rituals and mindfulness meditation, she slowly learned to sit with loss without fleeing or numbing herself. In her gentlest moments, she began to sense love shimmering through the pain, a love that felt bigger, older and more inclusive than any dogma. Lila's journey is a testament that grief, too, can be a temple where wisdom is revealed. You might be wondering now, what about you? What is possible for your own heart, your own path, your own season of searching? The wisdom of the ages, waiting at the edge of your life, pleads with a quiet urgency. Start where you are. Don't wait for certainty or ecstasy or the perfect path. Begin in the ordinary, the moment you wake, the meal you eat, the hand you hold, the question you dare to ask. This is the mystery and the promise that every soul, no matter how bruised or brilliant, is invited to drink from the river, to become a living vessel of transformation, a witness that wisdom does not belong to history, but to the ever-unfolding now. But what if, as you take your next step, you realize your story is not yours alone? What hidden connections, what fresh awakenings, what new chapters could unfold as you recognize your journey as part of the wider, ageless river? A stream that links you to every pilgrim, every seeker, every ancestor who has ever reached for the light. Stay with this question, for in the next breath the circle of wisdom may open wider. Your story, woven into the worlds, may discover astonishing new meaning. The greatest secret is this: the journey never truly ends. There is always more to seek, more to share, more to become, now and beyond. Pause for a moment and recognize the sacred journey you have just undertaken. You have wandered with ancestors, gathered with strangers around sacred tables, and let the world's wisdom wash over your own story. You have stood at the crossroads of faiths and philosophies, heard ancient songs echoing in city streets, and discovered the voice of eternity whispering within the ordinary details of daily life. Now, as the river of insight brings you to the shore of this series, the most important revelation awaits. Everything you have heard points not to an ending, but to a new beginning born within your own heart. When we gather all these revelations, the biblical call to live justly and love mercy, the Buddhist invitation to mindful presence, the indigenous wisdom that community is survival, the Sufi's pursuit of oneness, the sage's patient humility, the chorus of global insight proclaiming our kinship across difference, now we can clearly see that each tradition offers a unique hue in the spectrum of truth. The wisdom of the ages is not a museum of relics. It is a living rhythm, pulsing through every act of kindness, every moment of silence, every gesture of reconciliation. When we bring these truths together, something miraculous occurs. The isolated insights, once studied in fragments, are revealed as parts of a divine tapestry, threads interwoven by the Spirit through all of history, shimmering with the promise that our diversity is not a threat but a gift. What once looked like 1,000 separate lanterns becomes, in this light, a single radiant flame, illuminating the world's darkest corners and inviting all to see with new eyes. Let your heart rest here, in this aha moment. You have not simply collected ideas, but touched the pulse of eternal meaning. The hunger you feel for deeper life is the same hunger that drew the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, led Moses up the mountain, inspired Rumi's poetry, compelled the prophets to cry out, and encouraged your own ancestors to pray. You have journeyed from knowledge to wisdom, from separation to connection, from curiosity to Belonging. This is your accomplishment, your arrival at the threshold, a testament to your courage to seek, to question, to hope. From here, the spiritual crescendo rises to its highest note. Ask yourself, what would the world become if even a handful of us refused to see our differences as accidents of fate, but as invitations to shared wonder? Imagine finally seeing the entire divine tapestry, each tradition, each story, each life interlaced by sacred intention. Imagine a world where the river of wisdom, drawn from many springs, rushes together with enough strength to cleanse old wounds, to irrigate fields starved of hope, to carve new canyons of possibility for those still searching in the desert. The possibility is not fantasy. Around the world, ordinary people, just like you, are already quietly responding, daring to act, to forgive, to learn, to cross divides and become living bridges for the Spirit's reconciling work. This is the secret of the ages. You were never alone. Each step in your spiritual search joins you with a fellowship stretching back millennia and outward to every corner of creation. The sacred longing in you to love, to understand, to belong, is the very breath of God still moving over the surface of these modern waters. In your laughter and weeping, your questions and answers, your prayers and your pauses, you are part of humanity's unfolding story, a living chapter in the wisdom of the world. Now comes the moment of transformation, the sacred passage from intellect to incarnation, from hearing to living. Imagine how your life would change if you claimed the wisdom of the ages as your compass. What would happen if you greeted each day as a new classroom of the Spirit, each encounter as a possible messenger, every failure as a place to begin again? When you begin to practice these truths, pausing for stillness, embracing gratitude, forgiving boldly, and seeking community, you will discover that wisdom is not something you visit, but something you become. With each act, you inherit a blessing. Peace, rooted deeper than anxiety, compassion, mightier than anger, hope that persists through darkness. The more you risk living the ancient ways in the present moment, the more your own gifts will ripple outward, changing families, neighborhoods, and perhaps even nations. But this journey is not for solitude alone. The wisdom of the ages blossoms in relationships, each heart listening, each story shared, each hand reaching out. Together, we become a movement of souls, a community of seekers who not only believe in miracles, but become them, awakening the sacred in the soil of everyday life. Your call now is simple but holy. Take up the practices you have learned, share what touched you, seek out those from other paths, and listen for what is shared and what is unique. Find places to serve, circles to belong to, questions to wrestle with. Let your faith become a bridge, not a wall. I invite you to become part of this living chorus. Reflect. How has the wisdom of another tradition ever surprised, comforted, or challenged you? Where have you seen the sacred shimmer on a path other than your own? Share your story in the comments. Add your voice to this growing tapestry of seekers. Your experience may become the very lantern that lights another's next step. And do not let this be the final word. In the weeks and months ahead, we will continue exploring these rivers of faith, delving into themes of forgiveness, courage, creativity, and hope, all as seen through the world's diverse and dazzling spiritual lenses. If this journey has stirred something in you, don't let the fire die out. Subscribe, share, and prepare for more revelations that could reshape your life and our shared world. As we close, let this promise echo in your soul. Repeat it until it becomes your own heartbeat. Many live in search of meaning, but you are invited to become meaning. Many wait for wisdom to appear, but you are invited to embody wisdom now. Many see only fragments, but you who have listened, wrestled, wept, and rejoiced, are called to weave your days into the one tapestry that makes all things whole. And so I leave you with this. Pause, let these words settle, and as silence returns, may you walk forward carrying what you've received, not as a burden, but as a blessing, a gift for every soul you meet. The wisdom of the ages is alive in you. The story, your story, is just beginning.